Okay, welcome to our first video on imposter syndrome. Now, let me ask you a question to start things off. Have you ever looked around and thought, what am I doing here? That's called imposter syndrome. And guess what? It's a sign you're doing something important. So today isn't just a workshop, it's a reset button on how you view yourself in this journey. And I promise you won't leave here the same way you came in. So, show of hands, or maybe you just nod to yourself. Have you ever said, I'm not smart enough? I'm not technical enough? Have you ever said those things to yourself at any point in your life? Good. That means you're human. But now let's challenge those thoughts together. So, imposter syndrome sounds like doubt, but feels like fear. So, you minimize your wins, worry about being found out, and dismiss your progress. But here is the truth, it's not a signal to stop, it's a sign you're growing. Every great performer feels it before stepping on stage. If you listen to podcasts out there where they're being interviewed, they talk about it all the time. And why? Because what they're doing matters to them. The choice you're making to develop yourself personally and professionally matters to you. So let's pause. Think of a time when you accomplished something you didn't think you could. Maybe you were learning how to dive into a pool for the first time, or maybe you were learning to skate for the first time. Maybe you were a parent for the first time. It could be learning your first tech skill or solving a tricky issue or asking for help when you were scared. So think of a time, write it down, and guess what? This is your proof. This is your proof you can do hard things. You've already done them in some form or fashion. So, what I want to do here is I want to shift or reframe those thoughts. One of the most powerful things I ever heard is this: it's just a thought, and a thought can be changed. It's just a thought. I think this, I made this thought, and guess what? I can change this thought. Thoughts aren't facts, they're habits. Every time you say, I can't, try instead to reframe it to, I'm learning. And here's the kicker: vulnerability isn't weakness, it is the birthplace of courage. Okay, and I have Brene Brown to thank for that. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it is the birthplace of courage. It's just a thought, and a thought can be changed. And I have Louise Hayes to thank for that. So let's talk about cynicism as a mask for fear. Sometimes imposter syndrome wears a disguise, and that disguise is called cynicism. And maybe that cynicism manifests in just trying to look like you can't be bothered or that something doesn't matter. Maybe you're just kind of too cool for something. Cynicism can feel protective, but in reality, it's actually a cage. So let's break that wall down. Think of a time when you pushed past skepticism or cynicism and found something worthwhile on the other side. Think of that instance. Maybe you got to know somebody, whereas before you were too scared, you were cynical. Maybe they were too this or too that in your eyes, and you were judging them as such. And then you got past that, you got to know them, and it turns out they're actually a wonderful person whom you really, really connect with. Think about a time like that. Okay. Now, what I want you to do next is we're going to go and we're going to clear the mental trash. So I want you to grab an imaginary broom. Picture that broom in your head. It can be whatever size or shape or color. And we're going to go ahead and use that broom to clear out the junk. So here's how we do that. Step one, you want to write your limiting thoughts. Write them all down. And you know what they are. When you say a limiting thought to yourself, you start to shrink, your body pulls in, you contract, you get small, you feel less than, you don't feel worthwhile. Write that thought down as soon as you feel yourself contracting. Okay. Now I use the iPhone journal app. And that's where I keep a lot of my thoughts. Whatever you choose, could be on your phone, could be on paper in a journal, whatever you choose. So once you write down that thought, I want you to next write a truth-based counter statement for each one of those thoughts. So here's an example. We go from a limiting thought where we say, I just don't know enough. And we rewrite that counter statement to read like, I'm getting better every day. I'm learning more and more every day. I'm becoming more technical every day. Boom, there it is. You're rewriting your script. You're identifying those negative thoughts as they permeate your brain, as they cycle and loop. And that's what they're called, negative thought loops. Once you get into a negative thought loop, you just continue to ruminate until you make a conscious effort to see it, to write it, to change it. It's just a thought, and a thought can be changed. Now let's talk about confidence. Confidence is built. Confidence is not necessarily found. So it isn't that gift, that everybody's born with. It is a muscle that we develop over time. So every time you act, where you might ask a question, raise your hand, you might fix something or propose a fix, you might learn something new. Every time you act, you're doing reps, you're doing mental muscle reps to build your confidence muscle. So here's a tip. What I want you to do is start a wins journal. Now, I started a wins journal when I started something new recently, and let me tell you, it is quite a cheerleader for me. I didn't have a wins journal when I was studying to get my A+ certification, which is probably why it took me 5 years to get my certification, but that's a whole nother story in itself. And that's why we have these mindset sessions, because you have an opportunity to address the obstacles that you mentally put in your way. But anyway, start a wins journal every single day. Towards the end of the day or at the end of the day, I want you to write down one win, one line. That's it. One. It's not for likes. It's not for approval. It's only for you. Okay. One win. That win could be, I studied for 30 minutes consistently today. That win could be, I learned how to identify motherboards in the highest size order to the lowest size order. That win could be, I got an 85% on a practice exam or a 90% on a practice exam. That win could be, I woke up on time. I was able to spend time with my child. I was able to sit in silence and meditate. I don't know what your win is going to be. I just want you to keep a journal of your win. Now, the other thing to consider throughout this process is taking up space. So what do I mean by that? Power pose. I want you to use that space enlargement both mentally and physically. So when we talk about power pose, that's usually getting into a pose where your chest is out, your chin is up, and you are posing as if you are a superhero. What's happening when you pose is that all of the neurochemicals are being released to make you feel more powerful, right? So this is actually a technique that you can use before going in for a job interview. It gives you that extra confidence and you feel like you own it. But don't just do it physically. I want you to do it mentally. I don't want you to back away from challenges. I don't want you to shrink. I want you to ask questions. I want you to challenge yourself to come outside of your comfort zone because you have to own your presence, right? You don't have to be the loudest in the Zoom room asking a ton of questions. You just have to own your presence. Now, another piece that can really get in the way when it comes to imposter syndrome is something called comparison. Comparison behind the scenes is like looking at someone else's reel and saying, I'm not fitting that mold. They're ahead of me. They're taking more practice exams. They're scoring higher. They have a highlight reel that is more substantive than mine. So comparison will always ruin momentum. Comparison will always hold you back. Everyone's journey is different, right? Yours is different from everyone else's. Yours is different from mine. Mine is different from yours, and on and on and on. But what's beautiful is yours is unfolding magnificently. From now on, if you feel yourself saying things like, I'm not as good as them, I want you to replace that with, I'm improving every day, right? That's the path forward. So let's zoom out. Let's talk about this and wrap it up. Imposter syndrome, it's a sign of growth. Negative thoughts, changeable, right? Cynicism, it's a fear in disguise. Confidence, it's built through action. Presence, it's a choice you get to make every day. So practice those things that I told you about. Keep your wins journal, reframe one limiting thought each day. Speak up even when you're unsure. Take up space mentally and physically, and track your progress, not perfection. You've already begun that transformation. Now, let's keep walking. Thank you so much for joining me in this video, and I'll see you in the next one.